After Pelicans Media Day, I gotta say I was wrong. Culture matters, and the Pelicans believe they're building something special. But will this newfound belief translate to on-court success? We're gonna break it all down in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with y'all on this Thursday, and we're going to continue to break down what we heard from Pelicans Media Day. And there's a big theme that came across: culture. Just last week, I said, culture is overrated, culture doesn't matter. I was wrong. After talking to the players, hearing them talk, and seeing the belief inside the building, culture matters. And I'm going to play you a couple of clips from my one-on-one interviews with the players and talk about why this actually feels different. We're going to look at the Joe Dumars effect in the building and building this culture too. But also, it doesn't guarantee success, and the Pelicans are holding off on doing one thing. And I'll explain what that is a little bit later in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well, and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. Also on YouTube, I'm posting them on audio as well. You can see the full interviews. I'm uploading them slowly. The audio was a little bit wonky. We've got it mostly fixed. They'll be up on YouTube. They'll be in your podcast feeds as well. One-on-one interviews you can't get anywhere else. So let's get into this, right? I was wrong. Culture matters. These Pelicans players feel like they are building something special. And let's just start with some of the clips here that I edited from the interview so you can understand. Here's me talking with Herb Jones.
I think we're adjusted to how he wants us to play, how he wants everything ran. But I think as time goes on, we'll only get better.
So what's kind of being communicated to y'all about like the expectations are or how things are different and all of that?
Yeah, just showing up and competing every night, regardless of, sorry about that, regardless of score, record, who plays, who doesn't play. We just want to establish a culture of our playing guys night in and night out.
So I love that interview because Herb Jones is so nice and he apologizes for the random noises in the background. But you hear him talking about how what the expectation is, and they all know it. It's very clear. Let's go to Trey Murphy, hear what he has to say about a recent scrimmage practice that they had.
It's still early for me to say exactly what the difference is, but I think it is a good thing to have somebody that is one at that level as a player and done a lot of great things as a player. Guys like this.
He's really it seems like he set the expectation of just competing hard every single night and hopefully wins follow from that thing. Is that the mentality of the whole team right now?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Last Thursday he played, it was really highly competitive, and that was one of the first times the team played, so it was good to see.
Hearing that the practice was intense, that they haven't really, a couple of players were like, we haven't seen this level of things before, is highly encouraging for what this team needs to do. They're going to have to compete night in, night out in a really tough Western Conference. And they seem ready to do that. That they want to be better. And we'll touch on more of that here in just a few minutes. But I want to play one other clip for Jordan Poole. And by the way, all of these are going to be on the Locked On Pelicans YouTube page and in your podcast feed as well, the whole interview. But Jordan Poole, here's a clip from my talk with him.
Especially as a fan, you want to feel confident in what you're getting consistently throughout the locker room from the organization, for the team. I was just saying earlier, it's been a bunch of regime changes. Not too long ago, the Pelicans were just fighting for a playoff spot, right? They're, yes, in a playing game. So obviously once a season it's bound to happen with anybody. But I think our culture that's being built because Joe Dumars and Troy are coming in with specific expectations, but Joe is also one at the highest level, and he also knows what it's like to put together a team at the highest level, which not many front offices can say coming into a role, into a job, which I think is huge for us. And I just building that foundation early and allowing the veterans to be vocal, to talk about their experiences, because it'll help us throughout the long course of the season. I think that's when culture gets built, and culture is honestly what makes or breaks a team, long or short. And I think we're building something really special here with all of our guys in the locker room. So I'm looking forward to it.
Hearing him say all of that and kind of the culture that the team is building overall, right? Like, this is a group that really enjoys being together, but it's not just about that, right? The culture is these guys wanting to be better, pushing each other harder, helping each other succeed. I don't know if that was the case under David Griffin or not. It easily could have been, but at times when you're just losing so much, all of that goes away. The everydayers have heard me long say that losing is like a disease. It's something, an infection that penetrates your whole building and just brings it all down. That's what happens. And building up, you have to build up again from that. And making a move from David Griffin to Joe Dumars maybe just needed to be done to just get whatever bad negative feelings were gone from the building. But you've heard everyone really wanting to push hard for a variety of reasons because they feel so good at, so good about what's going on in the building with everything. And I think that's truly what the culture is. These guys are working to be better. The culture is these guys wanting to be better in the first place here, to be more than they already are, to work harder. That is the culture. That is what can elevate the team. It's not that they all like each other so much. I mean, that's not a bad thing. Don't get me wrong, but that's not going to win you games. It's that these guys want to work harder because of the culture and the tone that's being set. Zion Williamson saying, put all the responsibility on me. Give me the accountability. But he's never had that before, right? He's had the ability to do all of that. Him not doing that is more of a him thing than a lack of that in the building. But at least they've now kind of created that spark inside of him for that to kind of blossom and come out. And I think that's a really encouraging thing. That's what the culture is. And from talking with all of these players, hearing how hard they want to work, how hard they want to go to battle and win games, yeah, I was wrong. When I said this stuff doesn't matter, I'd rather you just get good players and all that, and you don't need to be singing Kumbaya and all of that, I missed the point on it. I did. And hearing that at Media Day and hearing from these players kind of does say, like, yeah, you do need to have at least like those type of attitudes, right? The culture doesn't need to be heat culture or everyone love each other and let's all be friends. It needs to be, we're here to grind. We're here to work harder, and we're going to bring in people that want to do that. And then the ones that maybe don't want to do that, those are the guys that are going to get pushed even further because everyone's making their work ethic go up. And I think that's what's so exciting about what is being built in the building and why you can kind of feel it coming through the Pelicans. And look, it's Media Day. We'll touch on that, a little bit later in the show. This isn't going to win you games by itself, but it's not a bad place to start from. And it's better than starting from, where the Pelicans were at times last season and in years past. You'll hear it in some of the full interviews that I have that are, again, all going to be posted. You really got to listen to the Herb one about his desire to be in New Orleans, which I think is really, really cool. And Jordan Poole's just a funny guy in the first place. That led to a really good conversation. You want to listen to all those, but you'll get the same sense of it. And I think that's what's so encouraging and makes me more optimistic heading into this season than, a lot of national media feel about this team. These are the things that they're missing that do matter. And I want to talk more about that, the Joe Dumars effect, coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. If you want player props, they got it. Building a same-game parlay, no problem. even jumping in live as the action unfolds, as you see the trends developing in the game, you can do that with FanDuel. It just makes everything a little bit more exciting. By the way, I even told you this was going to happen in yesterday's show. Zion Williamson's MVP odds, you can get in on the NBA futures, skyrocketed after seeing how good he looked here. So new customers can bet just $5. And if your $5 bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And if it wins, you're going to get $300. Never seen a better offer than that in bonus bets over at FanDuel. That is FanDuel.com. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. If you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. For your second listen, go watch or listen to the one-on-one interviews. We have a number of players there that is so exciting to be able to talk to them all, get their insight. Also have a one-on-one interview with head coach Willie Green. This is content you can't get anywhere else, so please go give it a listen. We talked to Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Willie Green, Kevon Looney, Yves Missi, Jose Alvarado, and Jordan Poole. The Poole one for sure is up. I'm working on getting the others up. It's a lot of fun to have these interviews and to bring you that kind of insight. And look, you see how those conversations with players impact my thinking in the show, right? I learn a lot in those type of interactions. It's really useful. So I'm glad I get to share a lot of that kind of insight with y'all as well. So we talked a lot about, in yesterday's show too, kind of the Joe Dumars effect, right? Everyone, including myself, not everyone, I wouldn't say it like this. Let me rephrase, collect myself here. Largely outside of New Orleans, this hire was panned across the board. I even called it a lazy hire. Didn't say it was necessarily the wrong hire, but was a lazy hire. Joe Dumars, I said, could still become the man and lead them to success, but the process to get there was definitely bad. Outside media, national media, hated the hire in general, right? The game has passed Joe Dumars by. And then on draft night, you really kind of saw it hit a crescendo of them basically just hating the Derek Queen trade. And we'll touch on that a little bit in the third segment here. But hearing how the players react to Joe Dumars, it's tough to fault it in this moment, right? Everyone wants to rush to judge everything that happens, almost in like society. But it's, a trade happens and we're grading the trade. It's like, who won? And it's like, when there's draft picks involved, how do you even know? You don't know for years on that sort of thing. I don't grade trades on the show when they happen in real life. I just talk about them. Because you can't judge this. You can't judge a draft pick when it's like, who had the best draft? We don't actually know who are going to be the best players or not. There have been plenty of times when we look at a draft pick and we're like, that guy's a stud. He's going to be great. 5 years later, that guy's barely in the league and did nothing for the team that drafted him. But they won the draft. They got good grades on draft night. Everyone wants to rush to judge and either praise or condemn hires, moves, every kind of decision at the NBA level, really in all sports. Same thing with Joe Dumars in that hire. But you start to then look a little bit more and you see things that work. I just mentioned it during the ad read that, Zion Williamson's odds for MVP have skyrocketed. He basically cut his odds in half in not a good way if you're now kind of jumping on him, but they're only going to get better, by the way. So if you want those MVP odds for Zion, go to FanDuel.com right now. So with that being said, right, that's going to, if people are thinking that's the impact already, that's going to kind of permeate across the board. That's going to stretch across the board to a lot of these Pelicans players. If you're going to get the best out of Zion, are you going to get the best out of Trey? Are you going to get the best out of Herb, out of Jordan Poole, out of DeJounte Murray? And all of that, I think, is something that people are underrating. Joe Dumars is having a very outsized impact on this organization already. You can hear the outsized impact on head coach Willie Green. We talked about that after Joe Dumars' press conference that he gave on Monday in the Tuesday episode of Locked On Pelicans. He's basically saying, you got to play the rookies if they're good. I don't care if you don't want to. I like that, right? You'll see the interview with head coach Willie Green, and Willie Green and him are kind of having, said they're having conversations on a daily basis on how to build this team, how they want to how they want this to all go and work because they have a good relationship. They've known each other for a long time. You heard Jordan Poole, you heard Herb Jones, you heard Zion Williamson, you heard Trey Murphy. I'll say, like, this is a guy that they have like massive amounts of respect for. Not that they didn't have respect for David Griffin, but this is different. You know, the guy played in the NBA, and I was on, WWL radio talking about this with Tommy Tucker yesterday morning, and was saying, they connect with Joe Dumars in a way that they're just not able to connect with David Griffin. It's why you've also seen a lot of former players, even if they were like role players in the NBA, have success as coaches. They're one of those guys. Joe Dumars is one of those guys. They have an instant connection because they are part of like a very elite and unique fraternity, in a sense, of NBA players that others can't necessarily relate to because of that. And Joe Dumars has all of that. They appreciate that he won a title. They're not necessarily looking at the remainder of his tenure in Detroit, which was not good. But to them, it doesn't matter because this is the guy that built something and they're part of that and they're feeling very empowered because of it. You've heard Zion Williamson basically out loud say, like, I feel empowered in a way that I haven't been before. That's a highly encouraging thing. You kind of get that sense, or I got the sense of talking to the players of that kind of same thing, that Joe Dumars is a draw and makes them want to be better. You have other people in the front office, whether you like them or not, and Troy Weaver and others there that are, working on some of the decisions, right? We know the impact that Troy Weaver has. If you can get those other pieces in place, have Joe Dumars kind of as the high level guy, bring those players in, and then Joe Dumars gets like a little bit more out of those players that were identified and brought in, and that are good, hopefully. That's encouraging. You got to get the rest of the front office right. That's, look, TBD. We just said that you can't grade everything just yet, so we don't know. Could be good, could be bad. There's definitely some questionable process in it now. I'd be lying if I didn't say all of that. But you can start to see, you might need to squint a little bit, but you're starting to see all of this is kind of working. There's something there. Might need to be polished a little bit. You might need to have, the glass get clean. I don't know what analogy I'm using. It's getting away from me here. I need to get better at analogies on the show in general sometimes. But you can start to see it, I think. And that to me is encouraging, right? I admit it. I was been down on the team a little bit here. I've also said, like, I think there's a lot of talent. I think they could be good. It remains to be seen. And it really was going to kind of land at the feet of Zion Williamson. And we feel good about that now. And so all of a sudden the picture starts to look better. And the Joe Dumars hire, as you start to get more information, start to see more of how it's working, running an NBA team, running a front office is more than just the trades you make, more than just the players that you draft, the players that you sign in free agency. It's everything else that you're doing too. And that's why in the beginning I said I was wrong, right? Like, I kind of put an emphasis on the transactions and all that. Get good players. I don't care if your 12th man is good when they don't play. And some of that's still true. But I was definitely undervaluing culture and what Joe Dumars is bringing or even was able to bring. And I think national media is as well. When you hear these players and the confidence that they have, you haven't always heard that. Now, they're not going to come out and say, like, we're going to be bad this year. I don't care, or anything like that. They're never going to do that. But they haven't had kind of the same level of whatever it is, the vibe, right? To use a millennial term here, the vibe is different than it's been in the past. And to me, that is a highly encouraging thing. All the national media that were like the Joe Dumars thing is terrible. The Pelicans have had the worst offseason. ESPN just put that out. I haven't really read it yet, but I will. All of that, it's too early to claim that kind of stuff. And you need the nuance of people who are kind of there on a daily basis to provide it. That's why you come to Locked On, right? Like, beyond me working for Locked On and them paying me, I do believe in the value of this network because of that, right? You get kind of national media coverage, but with a local perspective that you don't get almost anywhere else. And that is a really important thing. So I do think a lot of people are going to look back on this and change their opinions on what Joe Dumars is building here in New Orleans, because the process, while it seemed a little bit rough in the beginning, seems to be highly better than we thought it was going to be now that we've kind of gotten a peek behind the curtain and some transparency and answers on media day. That's a very good thing. But it doesn't guarantee wins. And the Pelicans basically said as much. Let's look at that coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by SKIMS Menswear. When I found out SKIMS was making underwear for men, I was pretty intrigued because I've heard so much about the quality from friends and family. So I had to give it a try. And let me tell you, it lives up to the hype. I've always had issues with underwear, whether it's fit, comfort, finding the right style. SKIMS changed all of that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed for the perfect balance of style and comfort. I really like the SKIMS Stretch 5-inch boxer brief. I work out a lot. I don't like wearing that like athletic underwear, that synthetic feeling like workout gear, especially when you're done with the gym, you're just feeling like you're wearing basketball shorts to a work meeting, or on a plane. I travel a lot. I need something that's going to work in the gym, be breathable as you're on, on a 4-hour plane flight. I've literally been on a plane every week this month. So SKIMS does all of it. They never lose their shape. They never ride up. They're really comfortable. They're breathable, which is also really nice. I wear a pair basically every single day. So if you want to try SKIMS Mens, go to skims.com. Let them know we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select Locked On Pelicans or Locked On NBA in the drop-down menu that follows over at skims.com. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everyday. It means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. For your second listen, it's Locked On Saints. What is going on with this team? Where can they improve? Do you want a breakdown of special teams play? Locked On Saints has it for you. Ross Jackson, the host, covering everything black and gold, who's actually there on Media Day helping me out with everything. Make Locked On Saints your second listen today. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we're talking about the culture, and feels like they're building something pretty good here in New Orleans. And I do think that, right? I do think these players really believe they're building something special and feel really excited, really good to be here. And then you're just going to get the best out of all of these guys. They're going to work harder. And if you can just incrementally improve like that on a daily basis, right? It's a cliche, but that idea of like 1% better than we were yesterday. That adds up, and that goes a really, really long way. And the team certainly feels like they're moving at least in that direction here. But it doesn't guarantee wins. It doesn't guarantee wins at all. The expectation is that you will compete every night, but not that you will win games. The Pelicans have been very careful to limit or not set high expectations. In his media availability, Joe Dumars did not say he expects this team to make the playoffs. They are going with the true definition of process over results. He said with the Derek Queen trade and trading away next year's future first-round pick, they're not doing that because they think they're going to make the playoffs. They did that because they believe in Derek Queen, or they want Queen as Zion insurance or whatever, right? They're doing that because they like the player. All he wants to do is just get guys that are going to compete, because you're not going to get wins unless you get guys that compete in the first place here. He has not told, the team that a success, when asked like, what's a successful season, he's not putting a wins number on it. He's not saying it's playoffs or the play-in tournament here. This is the definition of process over results. He doesn't really care about the results. You can do everything right in the process and still have a bad result that's a fluke, that's an outlier, or due to things that are outside your control. The team here is trying their best to control everything within their control. That is effort. That is the work you put in practice, right? You can't control Steph Curry just gets hot and goes 10 for 11 from 3 and you lose the game because of that. You can't control if the refs blow a call or whatever. You can control the things you can control, and the team seems like they are focusing on doing that. But it doesn't necessarily translate to wins in a sport where there are just so many other variables that you can't take charge of. So I like that they're doing what they do. And while it feels like they are building something really good here, you also need to keep in mind that it could still translate to a bad season. And that doesn't mean that the culture doesn't matter, like I said the other day, or that it's overrated, like I said. And again, I was wrong. What that means is You still then got to tweak and iterate and find what leads you to those, that success. And I think Joe Dumars is going to do that. If something's not working, they will stop doing that, right? Joe Dumars came in and was like, we are going to look at everything. We are going to overhaul what needs to be overhauled. And it's a process. You don't do that in one season. It does take a period of time. You can't turn the whole roster over in 1 year. You can't completely change your front office, your scouting department, all that in 1 year. It's a process that evolves over time. And so I think this is the first step. At the end of the day, while I believe in process over results, this is a results-oriented business. So you do need to still win, right? The process can be great, but if you're always losing, you probably actually do need to evaluate your process just a little bit. That's worth keeping in mind as we go into this. This is what I would call a process season. Let's see what works, what doesn't, where we need to make tweaks, where things need to change. I think that can be fine. You're kind of in the first year of a new era. And while I would like wins and I would like the playoffs, and I fully believe the team can do this, you still need everything else to kind of work to. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. Make sure you go to the YouTube page or wherever you get your podcasts and listen to the full interviews. They're going to be uploaded sporadically over the rest of the week here, but those are really fun. It's really great to talk to the players one-on-one. Look, if anything, it'll kind of get you hyped. They say, look, very few people don't win media day, don't win press conferences, don't win interviews. It's happened before, but in New Orleans. But overall, these are the type of times to get excited for this team. They're going through training camp right now. We'll have, updates from training camp practices. They're going to be getting on a plane on Sunday. We got a lot more to come here on the Locked On Pelicans podcast. So subscribe wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube as well. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Be back with y'all tomorrow.